They rolled their eyes when I entered the business luncheon alone. "She's just here for a free meal," a man said loudly. Then I pulled out my badge. "I'm the inspector sent to review your compliance." The color drained from his face. "I'm Corinne. I'm 42 now. Born and raised in Joliet, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. Not exactly small-town Midwest, but small enough for people to know your business, and big enough for them to pretend they don't. I'm a compliance inspector with OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Basically, I go into workplaces and make sure they're not slowly killing or exploiting people. It's not a glamorous job, but it's necessary. And I'm good at it. I wasn't always this way. I used to be quieter, more hesitant, more, well, married. My ex-husband, Roy, liked me better that way, mild, supportive, behind the scenes. We were married for 11 years. Had a golden retriever, a modest house, and a shared Costco card. Everything looked like it was supposed to, on the surface. But it started unraveling when Roy decided he was done feeling invisible. He said he wanted more from life. Turns out, that meant weekly sessions with his 26-year-old yoga instructor, Lara, who pronounced chakra with a soft SH and wore crystal necklaces the size of doorknobs. One day he left a note. Just a note. On the kitchen table, next to a half-eaten avocado. "I need to find myself." I wasn't even angry at first. Just stunned. Then numb. I grieved like someone died. But instead of a funeral, I was left with a cable bill and an unfinished bathroom remodel. Work became everything. It was maybe 6 months after Roy left that I was assigned a case involving a logistics company out in Naperville, Presley Freight. It started with a few anonymous complaints, which isn't unusual. What caught my attention was the consistency. Multiple people, some employees, some vendors, reported the same things: unsafe working conditions, improper equipment handling, discriminatory assignments, and unexplained paycheck deductions. When I sent an initial inquiry to the company asking for documentation, they replied with a PR-slick email inviting me to connect at their upcoming business luncheon. No records. No answers. Just a 12 p.m. slot on a Friday afternoon at McCormick Place, the big convention center in Chicago. It was a deflection tactic, clearly. But I accepted. Not because I expected to get real answers, but because showing up would tell me what kind of place I was dealing with. That day, I remember getting dressed and debating whether to wear heels or flats. I chose low heels. Professional but firm. I wore a clean navy blue suit, no jewelry. My hair was pulled back into a tight twist. No makeup, didn't need it. I walked into the event room right on time. It was a long, echoey space with folding tables, hotel-grade carpeting, and overhead projectors casting pie charts onto screens. People were already mingling near the buffet line, plates in hand, wine glasses already half empty. I checked in at the front table, signed my name on a pre-printed list, and stepped into the room. That's when it happened. A voice cut across the room. Loud, casual, too comfortable. "Oh look, someone's just here for the free meal." A few chuckles followed. I looked over. It was a man, mid-50s, sharp suit, square jaw. That smug kind of confidence you only see in guys who've never been told no. I later learned his name was Marvin Rottweiler, VP of Operations. I didn't respond. I just smiled tightly and found an empty seat near the back of the room. As I sat down, I saw a few women, maybe admin assistants or junior staff, cast sympathetic looks in my direction. But no one said anything. I wasn't hurt. I'd grown thick skin over the years. What got to me wasn't the insult, it was the assumption. That I didn't belong. That I was an outsider. That a middle-aged Latina woman showing up alone, without a name tag screaming CEO, had no right to be there unless she was begging for scraps. The event moved forward. Speeches. PowerPoint presentations. Words like synergy and workflow optimization thrown around like confetti. I kept my face neutral and sipped my water. Then Marvin got up to speak. He walked up with the confidence of a man who owned not just the building, but everyone in it. He started off with jokes, most of them aimed at competitors or consultants who think they know better than us. That got some hearty laughs. And then, while talking about how important it was to filter out time wasters, he looked directly toward my table. "The key to efficiency," he said with a grin, "is knowing who's contributing and who's just here for the meal." More laughter. Eyes turned toward me. I could feel them. That's when I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't storm the podium. I just walked forward, slow and steady, until I was standing close enough to see the bead of sweat forming on Marvin's temple. I reached into my blazer and pulled out my badge. "My name is Corinne Vasquez," I said, projecting my voice so it carried. "I'm the compliance inspector assigned to your facility. I've been reviewing the anonymous complaints filed over the past 6 months. And I'll be arriving at your Naperville location next week for a full audit." Silence. Pure, glorious silence. Marvin's face changed. His smug grin vanished like smoke. Someone coughed. A woman at the buffet dropped her fork. I turned and walked out, calm as ever, before dessert was served. The following Monday, I walked into Presley Freight's warehouse with 2 junior inspectors and a thick binder of complaints and regulations. From the moment we stepped in, it was clear we'd stirred something up. Management tried to delay access. A security guy named Al tried to tell us we weren't expecting. But I had the paperwork. We went in. The violations came fast. Pallets stacked dangerously high. Emergency exits blocked by equipment. Employees operating forklifts without safety gear. A leaking chemical storage area with no proper signage. And the kicker? A backroom used for temporary staff where the only ventilation came from a tiny fan in the corner. We interviewed staff offsite over the next few days. Stories poured in. A woman named Nadia told us she'd been docked pay for unauthorized breaks when her blood sugar dropped from working long shifts without food. A temp worker described being told to clean a chemical spill with paper towels and no gloves. A man in his 60s said he had to lift 80-pound boxes with no assistance or face termination. They weren't just cutting corners. They were shaving them off like meat from a bone. And through it all, Marvin avoided me. Emails came through his assistant, Todd, a soft-spoken guy who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. He tried to explain things away. He even offered to walk us through the real story over lunch. I declined. 2 months later, the report was done. And I'll tell you more about how that played out next. The fallout. The press coverage. The calls. Even what happened to Marvin. But for now, that's where I'll stop. Because standing in that banquet room, badge in hand, the entire room staring at me like they'd just seen a ghost, that moment stuck with me. It wasn't just about putting Marvin in his place. It was about finally standing in mine. The report took weeks to compile. I won't bore you with the full process, but just know that every complaint was investigated, cross-verified, documented with photos, timestamped logs, and signed witness statements. We found everything from safety violations to wage theft to failure to provide basic workplace amenities. Things that OSHA doesn't just frown upon. We issue fines, sanctions, and sometimes even federal referrals for them. I was up most nights, either typing notes or lying awake, thinking about what we were finding. The warehouse floor had been treated like a Wild West zone. Zero accountability. Equipment that should have been taken out of rotation a year ago was still being used. They'd cut corners everywhere, expired fire extinguishers, missing safety protocols, poor lighting in storage areas. Workers told us they were often disciplined if they spoke up, usually through random schedule cuts or being reassigned to more grueling shifts. I kept thinking about the woman, Nadia, the one who said she didn't think anyone was listening. The way she said it. Like she'd completely given up. It stuck in my chest like a stone. And here's the thing that people don't always get about these kinds of jobs: we see things that management never wants to admit exist. We're not there to ruin businesses. We're there to stop people from getting hurt. Or worse. Marvin tried every trick in the book to delay us. At first it was charming: "Why don't we set up a Zoom and talk through what you're seeing?" Then it turned into indignation: "This process is disruptive to our operations." Eventually it became thinly veiled threats: "We're reviewing whether your conduct at the luncheon was appropriate." That last part made me laugh. You want to talk about inappropriate conduct? Let's talk about how you joked about someone being just here to eat in front of 100 people while you were actively violating workplace laws. I documented everything. I mean everything. Every voicemail, every email, every misstep. My boss, Lisa, had my back the whole way. She was a no-nonsense type, mid-50s, sharp bob, kept a color-coded binder system for everything. She'd been with OSHA longer than I'd been in the workforce and had seen every attempt at corporate evasion. When Marvin's assistant sent an email suggesting we take a step back and recalibrate our approach, Lisa wrote back with a one-liner I'll never forget: "Our approach is compliance." No one replied after that. The day we sent the preliminary findings, my phone rang within the hour. Marvin. First time he'd tried to call me directly since the luncheon. I let it ring out. He left a voicemail that started with "Look, Corinne," and ended with "This doesn't need to be adversarial." I saved it, uploaded it to the case file, and blocked the number. We filed the final report 2 weeks later. Over 180 pages. It recommended over $350,000 in penalties across safety, wage, and procedural violations. Required follow-up inspections. And because some of the findings involved potential labor exploitation, it was also escalated to the Department of Labor for further review. The moment I hit send on that email, I just sat back and stared at my screen. Not in victory. In exhaustion. Because while Marvin and his ilk would probably walk away from this with a slap on the wrist and some HR workshops, the workers wouldn't. They'd still be left picking up the pieces. Companies like Bresley Freight didn't care about people, they cared about image. And we'd just torn a gaping hole in theirs. 3 days later, it hit the news. The Chicago Tribune picked it up first. Then WBEZ did a radio segment about unsafe logistics warehouses in Chicagoland. My name wasn't in the public-facing report, that's standard protocol, but people inside the industry started reaching out. One of them was Nadia. She sent me an email. "We heard about what happened. Some of us thought nothing would come of it. You made it real. Thank you." I read that email 5 times. Another message came in from someone else who'd been at the luncheon, a woman named Loretta who worked in HR for a different company. She admitted that she'd laughed along with the room that day. She felt awful about it. I didn't stand up. But I saw you stand. And I'll never forget that. Marvin? He was gone within the month. Officially, he stepped down to explore new opportunities. Unofficially, an anonymous source told Crane's Chicago business that he'd been pushed out after internal pressure from the board. I heard he tried to blame a mid-level safety manager for everything, but the paper trail made it impossible. That's the thing about compliance, you can't fake it if you've never done it. One rumor said he'd left the country. Another said he was consulting in Florida. Honestly, I didn't care. He was someone else's problem now. The company itself rebranded. New logo, new leadership, some key HR hires. I noticed a job posting for a new director of workplace integrity. That gave me a dry little chuckle. But the most surprising part? A month after the fallout, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in slightly shaky penmanship. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You were the only one who did her job that day." I didn't speak up. "I'm sorry for laughing. We were all wrong about you." R. I don't know who R was. I never tried to find out. That letter sits in my desk drawer to this day, right next to my badge. A quiet reminder that you never really know who's watching. Or what kind of impact you're making, until it hits someone where they live. The report was out. The fines were levied. Marvin was out of a job, and Bresley Freight had been publicly roasted in the business community. For a few weeks, I could breathe. My phone stopped buzzing. The inbox went quiet. But something else happened that caught me off guard. I changed. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic I'm a new woman way. But I noticed I carried myself differently. I stopped apologizing before speaking in meetings. I no longer second-guessed what I wore to inspections. I started seeing myself the way I'd always wanted to be seen, capable, composed, and just a little bit intimidating. Something clicked inside me. Like all the years of biting my tongue and being underestimated had finally reached capacity and spilled out. And then Roy came back. It started as an email. Simple subject line, checking in. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. The message was just 3 lines. "Hey, Corinne. Been thinking about you. Wondering how you've been. Want to grab coffee sometime?" Coffee. After a year of silence, he wanted to grab coffee. I didn't reply right away. I didn't even know what I felt. Part of me wanted to delete it and move on. Another part of me wanted to meet him just to see what he looked like after a year of regret and Pilates smoothies. Curiosity 1. We met at a small cafe in downtown Joliet, near the train station. It was a Tuesday afternoon, quiet. I got there 10 minutes early and watched the door like it was a courtroom. He walked in looking thinner, more tanned, and strangely unsure of himself. His once perfectly groomed beard had gone scruffy. He wore a linen button-down and flip-flops. In Illinois. In October. We made small talk. He asked about the house, I'd repainted it, the dog, with my cousin now, and my job. I told him the truth. I took down an entire logistics company last month. He blinked. You, what? I explained, in measured detail, the inspection. The violations. The fallout. I watched the realization flicker across his face. This woman was not the same woman he'd left behind. You always had this fire, he said, almost wistfully. I just didn't see it then. No kidding, Roy. He said he'd made mistakes. That Bali wasn't what he thought it would be. That Lara was too young, too into her crystals, and didn't understand his jokes. I nodded, sipped my tea, and let him talk. Then he said the one thing that almost made me laugh out loud. I don't know, maybe this was meant to happen. Maybe we could try again, you know? I leaned back, calm as ever. I think we already tried, Roy. 11 years of trying. And I spent the last year building something that doesn't include you. And you know what? I like it better that way. I paid for my own tea. Walked out. Didn't look back. That moment wasn't fireworks or dramatic music. It was quiet. But satisfying in a way that only comes when you know you're standing on your own 2 feet, finally, completely. And my revenge? It wasn't about ruining Marvin or shutting Roy down. It was about no longer needing their approval, their attention, or their validation. The best revenge wasn't loud. It was me, thriving. A few months later, I was asked to speak at a regional compliance conference in Milwaukee. Me. The woman they once scoffed at, now invited to train others on workplace dignity and enforcement integrity. I walked into that conference hall, shoulders square, badge in hand, and delivered a keynote that had people lined up afterward to shake my hand. I even got a thank you email from one of the junior inspectors I'd mentored through the Bresley case. She said she'd been doubting her path, wondering if this job even made a difference. She ended the email with, "Watching how you handled them showed me that being underestimated can be our greatest weapon, because they never see us coming until it's too late." I couldn't have said it better myself.